For decades, monster movies have been a part of worldwide cinema. Through the years, however, one monster has somehow stood above the rest: Godzilla. Since its debut in the 1950s, Godzilla has starred in 30 feature films, as well as several video games and comic book series. Clearly, Godzilla is a successful character. However, at the root of his success lies a deeply emotional origin, the story of the worries of a troubled people. To understand Godzilla's meaning, one must travel back to a time much grimmer than the fun, colorful happenings of some of the Godzilla films: the moment of the ultimate human encounter. August 6th, 1945. On this day, one of the last of World War II, American forces loaded a single explosive onto the Enola Gay, a B-29 bomber plane. As Peter Jennings and Todd Brewster wrote in their book The Century, the bomber's mission was nothing less than a quick and sudden end to the Pacific War. At 8:15 that morning, the B-29's bombardier released the lone weapon, an atomic bomb, over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 43 seconds later, it detonated. 75,000 people passed away that instant. When the pilot turned the plane to face the city, his co-pilot Robert Lewis wrote, "My God, what have we done?" 3 days later, another atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, and the bloodiest war in human history was brought to a close. Still, two of Japan's great cities lay in ruins. One survivor of the attack, Katsuyushi, was eating breakfast with a friend when the atomic bomb destroyed her hometown of Hiroshima. As she recalled years after the attack, suddenly there was a very, very powerful yellowish-orange flash, like when you're taking a picture and you see the flash, only 100,000 times more powerful. Like many other Japanese, Katsuyushi experienced the immense destructive power of atomic weapons firsthand. However, others in Japan witnessed the aftermath of their destruction. Ishiro Honda was a Japanese movie maker who had fought in China during World War II. On his repatriation from China, he passed through the broken land of Hiroshima. He never forgot what he saw. Understandably, many Japanese civilians grew nervous about atomic weapons after the attacks. Those kinds of anxieties would become common in post-war Japan for years to come. In 1954, 9 years after Japan's defeat and 2 years after the departure of General MacArthur's occupation forces, the scars of the August 1945 bombings were still prevalent in Japan. As historian William Sutsui wrote, the specters of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, though repressed formally and informally by Japanese society, the Japanese government, and the U.S. occupation forces, were particularly vivid, harrowing, and unresolved in 1950s Japan. Those same post-war concerns would be reinvigorated in the spring of 1954. During March of that year, a Japanese tuna fishing boat, called the Lucky Dragon No. 5, unknowingly strayed too close to an American H-bomb test in the Pacific. The entire crew became irradiated and unintentionally released tainted tuna into Japanese markets. When news of the tragedy released, millions of Japanese, including the emperor, responded by refusing to eat fish, while others started anti-nuclear peace movements around the country. Inspired by the Lucky Dragon incident, one Japanese movie maker, producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, began work on his greatest film. Tanaka knew that if he could address the post-war anxieties ubiquitous in Japan, which had been reawakened with the Lucky Dragon incident, his film was sure to succeed. Even so, Tanaka realized that he could not directly reference concerns about nuclear weapons. Straightforward reports about Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been discouraged in Japan for years. In fact, when a studio tried to distribute a documentary about the atomic bombings of those cities, American occupation authorities confiscated it and banned it from being viewed in Japan. Thus, Tanaka decided to come up with an implicit way to address the atomic theme. Upon consideration, Tanaka was spurred by the success of monster movies overseas, and decided to imbue an original monster with atomic meaning. Hence, Gojira, known in America as Godzilla, was born. Tomoyuki Tanaka wanted his new film to accurately capture the gravity of atomic destruction, and the worries people face in post-war Japan. To do this, he hired Ishiro Honda, the movie maker who had fought in World War II, to direct the film. Honda thought back to his war experiences and recalled the evocative images of a ruined Hiroshima. He used what he had seen in war to expand on Tanaka's vision for the film, and decided that the monster itself should embody the bomb. As Honda explained years after Gojira's release, the atomic bomb had emerged and completely destroyed Hiroshima. If Godzilla had been a dinosaur or some other animal, he would have been killed by just one cannonball. But if he were an equal to an atomic bomb, we wouldn't know what to do. So I took the characteristics of an atomic bomb and applied them to Godzilla. When the film was released a few months later, its message was clear. Gojira was a warning of nuclear proliferation and a vivid picture of the depth of atomic destruction. Gojira begins with the sinking of the Glory Number 5, a clear reference to the Lucky Dragon incident by Godzilla, a prehistoric creature awakened by an H-bomb test in the Pacific. Midway into the picture, the creature makes land in Tokyo and starts demolishing everything. Godzilla is a 50-meter tall, unstoppable behemoth who levels Tokyo with his mass and atomic breath. To heighten the sense that the monster is a metaphor of nuclear destruction, Godzilla crackles with radiation and leaves radioactive fallout wherever he tramples through. Not only is Godzilla powerful in the film, but he is resistant. Godzilla is impervious to nearly all forms of attack, including bullets, missiles, and even electricity. The scenes showing the aftermath of Godzilla's attacks are striking. The scarred, ashen ruins of Godzilla's attack clearly parallel the atomic attacks of August 1945. Alluding to the war, one woman says, "I hope I didn't survive Nagasaki for nothing." Throughout the film, many characters display animosity toward Godzilla, and hope that someone might discover a way to destroy the beast. Once such a weapon is finally discovered, the film's main characters travel out to sea to use it against the monster. During Godzilla's destruction, one character, Dr. Yamane, gives a warning that articulates the message of the film. If we continue testing H-bombs, another Godzilla will one day appear. The meaning here is clear. If humans continue to create and use nuclear weapons, they may face monstrous consequences. In other words, Gojira is, as author Steve Reifel has noted, a condemnation of the atomic age and a plea for nuclear powers to end the march toward oblivion. Tomoyuki Tanaka had predicted that a film addressing the nuclear issue would be successful. He was right. Gojira proved to be a box office hit, generating healthy returns in theaters across Japan. Inevitably, the film's success caused its production studio, the Toho Motion Picture Company, to begin filming a sequel. The hastily made result, called Godzilla Raids Again, had lost the nuclear theme from its predecessor. The thought-provoking commentary was replaced with a B-movie plot and focused on monster battles. Although the second Godzilla film was less emotional than the original, it was successful enough, for it was the first Toho film to feature a melee between two giant monsters. Still, in spite of its success in Japanese theaters, by the mid-1960s, the television had come to dominate the entertainment industry in many parts of the world. In response, Toho decided to make future Godzilla titles for children, viewing them as a faithful movie-going demographic. Also, Toho began letting other companies distribute the Godzilla films to televisions around the world. Thus, by the 1970s, Godzilla was seen on TVs in Germany, France, Spain, and the United States. The films became globally popular for their innocence and cheesy action. While the Godzilla sequel spread to an international audience, the original film, Gojira, had never been widely released outside of Japan. Instead, as time passed, the Godzilla sequels turned the character into merely a giant superhero, defending the Earth from other giant monsters. Throughout those sequels, there were times when the intended message of Gojira should not have been disregarded. However, but for a few exceptions, it seems that both the film and its warning were forgotten over time. 2015 marks the 70th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Although those attacks ended World War II, they marked the first nuclear attack on a human population and caused a profusion of post-war anxiety within Japan. Furthermore, they birthed the monstrous icon conceived by moviemakers Tomoyuki Tanaka and Ishiro Honda, who became awakened by the misfortune of the Lucky Dragon number 5. Before his death, Ishiro Honda shared that he had hoped Godzilla might help bring about an end to the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Though a giant monster is unlikely to be the cause of such a change, in the least, Gojira will always be a reminder of the destructive power of atomic weapons, and the concerns many had to live with in post-World War II Japan. Godzilla should be remembered as a warning of the dangers of nuclear power, for all his features, his fire, his size, and his roar, are a cry from a few Japanese movie makers pleading for the world to consider the consequences of using atomic weapons. Such is the essence of Gojira.